Almost 24 years ago was the last time I was on this stage, in this room. I was taping my first 1 hour special. It's called Killing Them Softly. My girlfriend was sitting in that row, pregnant. She's now my wife. The baby that she was carrying, my first child, I smoke weed with that nigga now. And what I remember most about that night was the pressure. Before the show, I had to run out there on the avenue and hand out tickets to anybody who would take them because I couldn't even fill the fucking room. And boy, what a difference 24 short years makes. And right before that time, my father had died. He never lived to see me do it. And when he died, I was inconsolable. I thought I'd never smile or laugh again. And the only thing that got me out of that space was a comedian friend of mine, the late, great Norm Macdonald. That's right. Shout out to Norm. And what Norm did, which I'll never forget, is he knew that I was the biggest Jim Carrey fan in the world. Now, I'm not gonna go all into it, but Jim Carrey is talented in a way that you can't practice or rehearse. What a God-given talent. I was fascinated with him. And Norm knew that. And he called me up and he goes, Dave, he says, I'm doing a movie with Jim Carrey. Do you want to meet him? And I said, fuck, yes, I do. And it was the first time I could remember since my father died being excited. And the movie was called Man on the Moon. I didn't know any of this. And in this movie, Jim Carrey was playing another comedian I admired, the late, great Andy Kaufman. Yes, and Jim Carrey was so immersed in that role that from the moment he woke up to the time he went to bed at night, he would live his life as Andy Kaufman. I didn't know that. When they said cut, this nigga was still Andy Kaufman. So much so that everybody on the crew called him Andy. I didn't know any of that. I just went there to meet him, and when he walked into the room where we were supposed to meet, I screamed, Jim Carrey! And everyone said, no! Call him Andy. And I didn't understand. And then he came over and he was acting weird. I didn't know he was acting like Andy Kaufman. Just like, hey, how you doing? And I was like, hello. Andy? Now, in hindsight, how fucking lucky am I that I got to see one of the greatest artists of my time immersed in one of his most challenging processes ever. Very lucky to have seen that. But as it was happening, I was very disappointed. Because I wanted to meet Jim Carrey, and I had to pretend this nigga was Andy Kaufman all afternoon. And he was clearly Jim Carrey. I could look at him and I could see he was Jim Carrey. Anyway, I say all that to say, that's how trans people make me feel. Here we go. Now, if you guys came here to this show tonight thinking that I'm gonna make fun of those people again, you've come to the wrong show. I'm not fucking with those people anymore. It wasn't worth the trouble. I ain't saying shit about trans people. Maybe 3 or 4 times a night, but that is it. Tired of talking about them. And you wanna know why I'm tired of talking about them? Because these people acted like I needed them to be funny. Well, that's ridiculous. I don't need you. I got a whole new angle. You guys will never see this shit coming. I ain't doing trans jokes no more. You know what I'm gonna do tonight? Tonight, I'm doing all handicap jokes. Well, they're not as organized as the gays. And I love punching down. There's probably a handicap in the back right now, because that's where they usually make them sit. I came here to laugh at transgender people. I didn't know this nigga was gonna make jokes about us. Come on, y'all, let's get the fuck up out of here. Right. I saw Obama on TV and said, oh, I'm voting for this nigga. I remember the day I voted for Obama. I voted in Ohio. And my vote matters in Ohio. Ohio is a battleground state. But when I pulled up to the polls, all the soldiers were in line. There were so many black people in that goddamn line, I didn't even know it was the polls. I thought it was a check cashing place. We were hugging each other, and old people were singing hymns and spirituals and shit. It was like the OJ verdict times 10 or some shit. I've never seen black people that happy. 8 years later, I'm pulling up to the polls again. This time, I'm driving a brand new Porsche because the Obama years were very good to me. I was early voting, and when I parked my car, I figured out something that it would take the rest of the country another week to figure out. I understood that Donald Trump was going to be our next president because in Ohio, unlike DC, you could see the results in the parking lot. It's all these goddamn pickup trucks and tractors and shit. And then I walked up and I saw a long, long line of dusty white people. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, these were the poor whites. And I must tell you, I've never had a problem with white people ever in my life. But full disclosure, the poor whites are my least favorites. We've gotten a lot of trouble out of them. And I'd never seen so many of them up close. I looked them right in their coal-smeared faces. And to my surprise, you know what I didn't see? I didn't see one deplorable face in that group. I saw some angry faces and some determined faces, but they felt like decent folk. No, they did. In fact, I'm not even lying, and I didn't sound fucked up, but I felt sorry for them. I know the game now. I know that rich white people call poor white people trash. And the only reason I know that is because I made so much money last year, the rich whites told me they say it at a cocktail party. And I'm not with that shit. And I stood with them in line like all of us Americans are required to do in a democracy. Nobody skips the line to vote. And I listened to them. I listened to them say naive, poor white people things. Man, Donald Trump's gonna go to Washington and he's gonna fight for us. I'm standing there thinking in my mind, you dumb motherfucker. You are poor. He's fighting for me. And they all looked at me. They could tell who I was voting for just as easily as I could tell who they were voting for. But do you guys know what we all had in common? Not one of us, not a single one of us, looked like we felt good about what we had to do in that booth. We were just doing our goddamn duty. Yes, I voted for Hillary Clinton. Of course I did. I voted for her because I liked what she said vastly better than I liked what he said. But to be honest with you, at that point, that shit was like watching Darth Vader do the I Have a Dream speech. That bitch is mean as hell. She'd already Karate Kid swept Bernie Sanders' legs from underneath him. Boy, it was hard voting for that shit. But it was the lesser of the evils. I know you were a Clinton supporter, Miss I. I'm sorry to say like that. It didn't feel bad voting for her, but it didn't feel as good as it should have. She was gonna be our first woman president. They were gonna make coins out of this bitch. And somehow she just missed the dunk. Of course she should have beat him. Of course she should have beat him. You know what voting for her felt like? It was bittersweet. It felt like I was lucky enough to eat Halle Berry's pussy. And whilst I was doing so, she fucking farted in my face, man. Now you understand, I'd still do it. But boy, I wish she didn't fart in this great nation's face.
Please help me welcome to the stage the co-creator of Chappelle Show, the one and only Neil Brand.
Hi, Dave. Honestly, I don't know how this night came to be. Dave doesn't tend to like formal events. Normally, he dresses like a window washer. I can only imagine his wife Elaine said to him, "Babe, how could I get you to stop smoking for 2 hours?" And Dave, assuming it would never happen, was like, you'd have to get Jon Stewart, Sarah Silverman, Neil, Q-Tip, Tiffany Haddish, Lorne Michaels, John Legend, Bradley Cooper, and say, Morgan Freeman. To fly to DC and honor my talent. Elaine said, great, October 27th. And Dave was like, shit! Dave gave me a career. We met in 1992 at a comedy club in New York City. We wrote a few jokes together over the years, but I'd always hoped we could do something bigger. Then in 1997, Dave calls me and goes, hey, if Universal reaches out to you, tell them we're writing a weed movie together. And I was like, what weed movie? And Dave said, don't worry about it. Next thing I know, someone from Universal calls me and asks, are you writing a weed movie with Dave Chappelle? And I was like, yes? And they go, when can you pitch it to us? And I was like, in 30 days' time. So we had a month to figure the pitch out, and finally on day 29, I called Dave, and I'm like, dude, we got to work this weed movie out. And he goes, what weed movie? Anyhow, the day before the pitch, we outlined Half-Baked. It took the full day, about 16 hours, and that attention to detail really showed up on screen.
I don't know about y'all, but I can't even move.
It's like I feel stuck here, yo.
Cut to January of 1998. Half-Baked opened against Good Will Hunting, Wag the Dog, As Good as It Gets, and oh yeah, Titanic. Right? It was a critical and commercial flop, and quite frankly, isn't very good. A couple years later, after the stink wore off, both professionally and personally, Dave and I were on the phone again, which was a thing people used to do. And he says to me, hey man, we should do a TV show like Playboy After Dark. Now, if you remember what Playboy After Dark was, get your affairs in order because you're on death's door. If you don't remember Playboy After Dark, it was a super laid-back TV show in the 1970s hosted by Hugh Hefner, who was a magazine publisher and mild sex trafficker. Imagine Jeffrey Epstein with a grotto. Anyway, Dave and I figured out a rough format for what would come to be Chappelle Show. Went around pitching to a few networks. HBO didn't go great. The woman actually said to Dave, and I quote, "Why do we need you when we have Chris Rock?" See, back then, there could only be one popular black comedian at a time, unlike today, when there can be 3. So then a few minutes later, we pitched to Comedy Central, and they bought it. We made the pilot for Chappelle Show, we got picked up to series, and the show went really well. Like, absurdly well. Like, so well, you gotta go to Africa well.
Our top story, as we all know, Congress recently approved paying over $1 trillion to African Americans as reparations for slavery.
And I got enough cigarettes to last me and my family for the rest of our lives. I'm rich, biatch!
When we started the show, I knew Dave was the funniest person I'd ever met. By the end of the show, I knew Dave was one of the funniest people who'd ever lived. There were times where he would just improvise something that we'd never talked about before, maybe never even thought about before. Clayton Bigsby's entire speeches about breathing the white man's air and Will and Grace, all improvised.
If you don't like Will and Grace, that don't mean there's something wrong with you. It means there's something wrong with Will. He's homosexual.
Tyrone Bigham's speech to the kids about doing drugs with Mickey Mouse, totally made up.
You know what dog food tastes like, do you? It tastes just like it smells. Delicious.
Rick James saying it's a celebration, and fuck your couch.
Buy another one, you rich motherfucker. Fuck your couch, nigga. Fuck your couch.
And what do the 5 fingers say to the face?
Slap.
He made it all up. Writing and directing Dave sometimes was as simple as me standing on set with my jaw hanging open like, cut? The thing that I love about Chappelle Show is it allowed Dave to be his entire self, to express his intellect, his anger, his morality, his silliness, his hypocrisies, his sadness, his blazing talent. Chappelle Show was a rare thing. It was a fully faceted document of a human being living in the United States of America while having the surreal experience of being born with black skin. So, you know, Playboy After Dark. Also, the show was personal. See, I always felt like Dave blamed me for the failure of Half Baked. So one day we were shooting a sketch where Dave quit the show because he got Oprah pregnant. And we're doing a scene where he's going, like, rampaging through the offices, and he gets to me, and he dumps trash over my head. And here's why I suspect he blamed me for Half Baked. As he dumped the trash over my head, he said, "This is for Half Baked." All right, as you can see, he claims that I actually wrote that line and told him to say it, which is the only time this entire evening that I'll be receiving any credit for Chappelle Show.
Me and Dave are both from D.C., which means that we start our careers taking a train to fucking comedy shows. Dave Chappelle is the oldest young comedian in the fucking business. This motherfucker's 44, been doing comedy for 43 years. This motherfucker was born, came out, why? Knock, knock, motherfucker! With a cigarette in his hand at the same time. The Dave Chappelle Show. Being on that show changed my life. But one character in particular, Ashley Larry, a lot of people remember me as Ashley Larry. And when we did that, Dave was like, "Donnell, what are you gonna do to prepare for the role of Ashley Larry?" I said, "I'm gonna take a shower, nigga. And just dry off. I'll be the ashiest motherfucker in Hollywood."
I'm from Washington, D.C. Chocolate City. us, nigga is a pronoun. We have very thick skin. We don't shy away from the jokes. In fact, humor was our mode of survival. The only reason I never got my ass whooped on these streets is because niggas knew I'm hilarious. I was getting ready to start high school. We had a principal named Ralph Neal. That nigga had just seen Lean on Me and was walking around with a bullhorn like that was him. I had just gone to middle school in Ohio. I was gone for 3 years. In the 3 years that I was gone, crack came out. I came back to Washington. You guys remember crack, don't you? You remember what it did to this city. That's why it's strange to see so many white people jogging and pushing strollers and things. Because all these niggas in D.C. did the heavy lifting. We did the hard part. This is a black city. They call it Chocolate City, not because shit has nothing to do with chocolate. That was niggas. She got to picture it, okay? Like, say I'm in bed and sleeping, and suddenly my wife wakes me up. David, wake up. And I'm like, oh, look who's come around. And I pull my dick over the top of my pajamas. And she says, no, I hear something. I go, oh, this bitch. So I get up out of bed, grab the gun. I say, wait here, baby, I'll go check it out. Just lock the door behind me. Oh my God, she's right there in the kitchen is a heroin-addicted white, and he's digging through the change jar by the door. I worked really hard for that change. I gotta do something. So first, I wrap the shotgun. Hey, motherfucker, click, clack. That's a test. That click-clack sound will stop a rational human being in their tracks. But sure enough, this person is not rational. They're sick on drugs. They're digging in the change. I gotta act fast. This nigga's almost got $1.50. I warned you, birdshot. And there it goes. Hot BBs will permeate his yellow heroin skin. Remember, I'm not killing him. I'm just peppering him up nice. He lets out a heroin scream. And that should be the end of it. But, uh-oh, I miscalculated. While he's on the ground screaming, I noticed that his teeth are horribly miscolored. That's not heroin at all, is it? That's crystal meth. He pops right back up unscathed. Roar! Time for the heavy stuff. Clack, clack, buckshot! And then if he got a friend with him, I got one more bird shot left, and I repeat the cycle. After that, nigga, it's slugs for everybody. And I'll be in a kitchen full of dying heroin addicts, saying stupid heroin last words. You shot me, bro. Oh, it hurts, man. It hurt. Their last words are always the dumbest words. Like, why is your dick out? I'm just afraid of being attacked. Happens to the best of us. Don't ever forget what happened to that French actor. You know what I'm talking about? Juicy Smouillet. He's a very famous French actor. Y'all never heard of Juicy Smouillet? Juicy Smouillet is an actor from France. And he became famous on a show called Empire. One night, he was in Chicago late at night and was the victim he was the victim of a racist and homophobic attack. You see, Juicy Smouye is gay and he is black, not just French. Oh, it was a crazy story. Apparently, when he was walking down the street late at night, two white men came out of the shadows with MAGA hats on and beat him up. Tied a rope around his neck, called him all kinds of niggas, and put some bleach on him and ran off into the night. This shit was like international news. And everybody was furious, especially in Hollywood. It's all over everybody's Twitter feed and Instagram page. Justice for Juicy and all this shit. The whole country was up in arms. It was talking about it all the time on the news. And for some reason, African Americans, we were like oddly quiet. We were so quiet about this shit that the gay community started accusing African American community of being homophobic for not supporting him. What they didn't understand is that we were supporting him with our silence. Because we understood that this nigga was clearly lying. None of these details added up at all. He said he's walking down the street in Chicago and white dudes come up to him and say, "Hey man, aren't you that faggot nigger from Empire?" The fuck? Does that sound like how white people talk? I know white people. They don't talk like that. Are you that faggot nigga from Empire? They would never say that. It sounds like something that I would say. If you're racist and homophobic, you're not even gonna know who this nigga is. You can't watch Empire. Black people never feel sorry for the police, but this time we even felt sorry for the police. Can you imagine if you was a police veteran taking this kid's police report? Okay, Mr. Smouye, please tell me what happened. All right, you're 2 a.m. You left the house at 2 a.m. It's minus 16 degrees. All right. You were walking. You were walking. All right. And where were you going? Subway. Sandwiches? That's when the men approached you? Did you see them? Do you have any? Okay, what do they have on? MAGA hats. MAGA hats on in Chicago. Excuse me one second, Mr. Smouye. Frank, come here for a second. Find out where Kanye West was last night. Such a fucking outrageous story. He said they put a rope around his neck. Has anyone here ever been to Chicago? Yeah. All right, so you've been there. Now tell me, how much rope do you remember seeing? Who the fuck is carrying rope? Like, when did you get mugged, nigga, in 1850? Who's got rope? Who's got rope? Man, that shit was awful. So, okay, I'm doing a show somewhere, and I'm on stage, and I was a little drunk, you know. And I figured, fuck it, let me talk about that nigga a little bit. I figured to be safe, because, you know, everybody's phones are locked up. And I went in on this kid. I was talking all kinds of shit. Now, I didn't know that there was a journalist in the audience. He said it's a mentality that very few people ever recover from. Don't you forget it, son. You are broke. He said, these are just financial circumstances that I hope to overcome one day very soon. And I said, well, Dad, whatever you want to call this, it's wildly uncomfortable. There was a big dance coming up in the middle school. I was 12 years old. I said, Dad, can I go to the dance? He said, of course you can go to the dance. I want you to get out and meet some more kids. I said, great. It costs $3 to get in. And my dad said, ooh. Sorry, son, I don't have it. I was like, what the fuck? You don't have $3? Well, then how are we alive, Dad? Wish I found some way out of this hell. I'd do anything to not be poor. I will show Michael Jackson my anus if I get a chance. I just gotta get out of this hell. Dad said, if you want to go to the dance bad enough, I tell you what, there's some money in the change jar, get the money from there. I was 12 years old, that's what I did. I showed up to the dance early. There's a long line of kids waiting behind me while I'm at the door trying to count out 300 pennies to get inside. I will never forget this shit as long as I fucking live. Oh man, you know, if you've been poor, you know what that feels like. You ashamed all the time. Feels like it's your fault. And all them kids was laughing, ha, ha, ha. Look how poor Dave Chappelle is. Like when I think back at it, that's really the only time in my life that I ever thought to myself, I should kill everybody at school. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
This is why I say that hip-hop has done more damage to young African Americans than racism